Hey folks, today we're with my really good friend and singer-songwriter with the God Amsterdam's Erick Pace, and we're going to discuss nootropics, creativity, and brain chemistry today. A little history on my background. Obviously, you know I immersed myself in a bunch of different fields, whether I was a paramedic on the SWAT team or developing advanced treatment protocols for stroke patients and heart disease patients, cancer patients. Now we're going to focus on the brain and creativity and nootropics, because obviously it's going to take us to the next level of treatment protocols. And because we're trying to get very complex data across so you folks understand it, what better way to do that than with a singer-songwriter that takes what's in my head and squeezes it down to something that folks can remember. So Erick and I have been collaborating for close to how long, bro?
8 years.
8 years. We've been collaborating for close to 8 years. So a lot of the stuff that you see in my videos, Erick and I have collaborated on, and he helped me drill down on it, because obviously I get a little complicated. I can lose people. But with medicine being broken right now in the United States, being 37th in the world, I feel it's an opportunity to really create some cutting edge content with Erick and I's collaboration in the medical market, in the rehab market, as well as developing books, videos, and even movies for folks to help them resonate, to help them understand what they can do about their health when they have a specific diagnosis. We also focus a lot on performance, enhancing the body and enhancing the brain.
The only time innovation happens is when two fields that don't normally speak to each other speak to each other.
If I could articulate complex medical data or complex medical information involving the brain, the heart, or advanced cancer therapy, if I could squeeze it down and Erick gets it because he's not in the medical field, then we have a good start. When I met Erick, he took me to obviously this recording studio, and he showed me what goes into making a song, mastering a song, obviously what all this equipment is for. So when he started teaching me this, I'm like, wow, this equipment right here is no different than my laboratory where I do advanced testing. Everything needs to be tweaked. Everything needs to be looked at and customized, and he's customizing songs for his band, and I thought, wow, I know music is very important for healing. I know music is, we're all hardwired for music since the beginning of time.
You know, a song has to have a hook. That's the only reason the song ever gets on the radio. It's the only time it ever climbs the charts. There's a hook. What's the hook? How do you take all of this science and you boil it down to a few sentences or a few bars, musically speaking, and give that hook?
What John Douglas was able to do was not solve crimes, but narrow down who the suspects were based on all the research he's done when interviewing serial killers. Well, when I was looking at that, he mentioned something about crime scenes, and then I ran by Erick. I go, listen, Erick, every body and every body has a story. And I said to Erick, I think I got a good hook here. Everybody and every body has a story, and we kind of went with that. You know, the same reason, like when you're making a song, what's going to get people to tap their finger? What's going to get people to remember your song? Nobody can remember a phone number when you say it to them, but you got a good song, they repeat the words.
Right.
You know, so
everybody knows Jenny's phone number. Just saying. This
collaboration on clients and content, folks understand that Erick's ability to help me drill down on these things, when I have to sit down in front of 3 neurologists or 3 cardiologists, I have to talk at 60,000 feet, and then I got to drill something down for the family. So a lot of times, if I'm tired, I may, you know, I may mess up, and I don't ever want to lose anybody, because I have a short interval of time to develop these treatment protocols, because they're not done in traditional medicine.
To the uninitiated, it may sound scary, and here we are talking about the fact that a hook to boil down science into 1 or 2 lines.
So by us collaborating and putting that together, maybe somebody could watch a 3-minute video or listen to some of our content and say, you know what, when I go into the doctor and he recommends an antidepressant, I'm going to say, let me try some omega-3s, because they're great for the brain. The brain's made up of fat. Let me up my thyroid a little bit. You know, they're using thyroid right now to treat PTSD. You know, and let me look at my progesterone levels if I'm a woman, or my testosterone levels. And here we just empowered somebody to ask those questions when they got that 10 minutes with the doctor, and we just maybe stopped them from getting a drug that was just going to, you know, turn them into a zombie.
There is a transition in medicine, and every time we are sitting around together and we meet people, strangers, and they start talking, and they know all of this science about the gut, or about, you know, the gut being the second brain, or about fat is good for your diet. It's amazing because this is not stuff that's mainstream, but so many people know it because it's true.
Recently in Winter Park here, Eric helped me. He was one of 15 people that helped me design this really advanced treatment protocol for John Michael Knight. John Michael Knight, he had a stroke at like 18 years old, and he ended up with locked-in syndrome. So our friends got together, and one of our friends is Clancy Bounds. He's a malpractice attorney. So what I did is I pulled all this research together, and I knew that John Michael was at one of the major stroke centers in the world, and I was going to have to put a video together, and I was going to put some content together that was going to reach out and educate these people. So Eric and I started brainstorming the John Michael protocol. Eric did the lead-in on the video on the Russ Scala YouTube channel, and I think it's pretty powerful.
I always find it fascinating that he works that hard. Sometimes, you know, if you go back to the songwriting thing, and I'm giving myself too much credit, but, you know, it's like the muse is there when you're writing songs, or she's not. I think sometimes that I'm just the muse that's just sitting there that somehow he springs off of.
Yeah, one of the things that I noticed, folks, that Eric and I talked about a lot is something called dead air. Now imagine, I was a paramedic attached to the SWAT team. If I wasn't going 100 miles an hour, I wasn't happy. Well, what I've learned over 40 years is that whether it's celebrity, professional athletes, writers, songwriters, that when these folks get into trouble, it's during the dead air time. It's that when they're engaged in the music or when they're in front of the audience, their brain is firing on a bunch of cylinders, they're feeling great. But then when they walk away from that and they got to wind down, their brain chemistry has a hard time winding down. You know, you don't want to put a very creative person on an antidepressant.
What's really cool about nootropics is that it affects your brain chemistry, where it allows you to be hyper-focused for periods of time when you want to be hyper-focused on writing a song or figuring out a business problem or whatever. If you are a person that has to create stuff out of nothing and you are suffering from dead air, and you know if you're suffering from dead air.
Tapping the foot, banging the fingers. You know, you can see those people.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
you know what I mean? It's
if you're always on, and that's annoying, because I know that it's very annoying to be always on. Nootropics balances it out.
Yeah, I remember when I was working like 96-hour shifts at the Knife and Gun Club, South Orange Blossom Trail, and then when I would get off work after working 96 hours, I'd be drinking. So I knew that was a bad behavior even back then. So I would call up my lieutenant and go, listen, man, can I come in and run emergency calls? Because I was only calm. And dig this here, I used to smoke a Marlboro Red on the way to a call. When you smoke it and inhale it and hold it, it hits your brain in like 8 seconds. Nicotine calms you down but hyper-focuses you. So I would smoke the Marlboro Red before I got on the emergency scene. I would kick the doors open, put my headset on to call the hospital, and I was jacked in. Now, obviously, that wasn't healthy, and I was in my 20s thinking I was bulletproof, but I was one that's not good with the dead air. Folks, one of the things that Eric and I collaborated on is just a few years ago, the leading neurologists in the country didn't know that the brain kept growing. They thought it was hardwired at 16 to 20 years old, and that brain tissue stopped growing. Well, right now we know that neuroplasticity, the development of new brain tissue, happens all the way up until the time we die, and it's opening up the door for rehab and for stroke rehab and synaptogenesis, which is where you grow new synaptic pathways. You ever see that diagram of the two nerve cells, and inside here is all the little circles? That's the synapse, okay? In between, that's where all the serotonin, adrenaline, and dopamine, our feel-good chemicals, float in between those tree branches. So when Eric was showing me about mixing music and the importance of music, I knew that a lot of people, when they hear certain sounds, the cadence in the music, it takes them back to a place. And that place, and when they listen to music, it helps them secrete neurotransmitters or our feel-good chemicals. So music is being looked at now by the neurobiologist as a healing treatment protocol. My feeling is take it a step further. We could use music with virtual reality that could stimulate neurogenesis. There's something called mirror neurons, where if Eric is watching somebody play a guitar, his brain will light up in a certain place. Then if Eric plays the guitar himself, the brain will light up in the same area.
Guitar is my fetish, apparently.
So my point to that story is we didn't even know mirror neurons existed. My point is if there's a paralyzed person with a virtual reality headset on, watching movements, if he was a soccer player, a guitar player, or a runner or an athlete, and you combine that with the music that he remembers, the music that makes him think about a certain time, I believe the music can be used neurobiologically as a healing process. And there's a lot of research out there, and we've been brainstorming on that as well.
Yeah, I've thought for a long time that music is a emotional fax machine. We've all experienced it. We hear a song, and it transports us back to the time.
I remember I was at,
and you know exactly where you were. You know exactly what was happening at that moment when you heard that song, and that is an emotional process. It's just like the, to take it one step farther, it's like when you know that you're going to write a song, and you know what the lyrics are, and you say, okay, is this a happy song or a sad song? Well, okay, if it's a sad song, you got to write it in a minor key, because every human, when they hear a minor key, when they hear that minor key note, when they hear that chord start off the song, they know, oh, we're in for a sad song. Or it's not about tempo, it's about minor or major. So that's why I always say that it's an emotional fax machine. But
I keep thinking about people in rehab, Eric. What type of music would they want to listen to? You know what I mean? Everything. I mean, everybody resonates with the Rocky tune, and I'm not saying everybody's going to listen to that, but my point is, like, when you're in rehab, when you're sweating, when you're having to focus, then I believe there's certain music that will assist with that process.
Yeah, it's an inspirational thing. So of course, if someone has experienced the Rocky theme, that will inspire them. If they've not experienced it, if they were too old for that, that won't do it. But it's just a weird thing, It's like the first time I ever heard Jack and Diane, when I hear that song, I'm instantly transported back to the mid-'80s when I heard it the first time visiting my aunt in Ohio, and my cousin had that on vinyl, and I can't hear it without being right back in Ohio.
See, that's what I'm talking about. It took you back to a place.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So someone with Alzheimer's, that could be really,
well, yeah,
that could be very helpful.
And that's my point, folks. Somebody with Alzheimer's, somebody with dementia. Maybe if we take the music from that era that was really popular for these folks, maybe it'll help light up the dendritic pathways, the synaptic pathways, to stimulate the development of new brain tissue. I mean, you can't go around the world and you can play those few notes from Jaws without everybody knowing what that is.
When John Carpenter is making Halloween, he shows the horror scene with Jamie Lee Curtis, and all of the studio heads that are watching this with him in the room, they decide they're canceling this project. They're not going to do it. So John Carpenter says, just give me one more day. Give me one more day. So John Carpenter, a filmmaker who still at least knows how to do some stuff on a piano, sits down and does the dun 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 dun. So he records those few piano notes, puts it to that same scene. The next day they all watch it, and the studio heads are, holy cow, this is scary as hell. We're making this film.
Just that little bit of music.
But it was just, and it's no different than Jaws when they couldn't get the shark to work. It was terrifying, even though there was a crappy, dead electronic shark that wasn't working. And they still made one of the most terrifying shark movies of all time. Music.
I think, folks, where we are with medicine is that Erick's and I, the future of our collaboration, not only has it evolved, but has gotten stronger along with Trent, and we've got some other business partners. New opportunities are arising all the time, and I still get back to, listen, when I was a paramedic, I thought I was saving lives. I was a few, but if we could get this collaboration and this content together to reach out to thousands of people to make decisions that could save them, that's huge. So the diet is going to be real important. The high protein, high fat diet, the high fat diet was vilified for years. Now we know that it doesn't cause heart attacks. Well, all that's changing. And because people need to wipe the chalkboard clean in their head, not only are they going to need, research, but they're going to need like a collaboration. You say your music appeals to kids that are 8 years old and people that are 80.
I think that with our collaboration, I think we have the possibility of being the Mr. Miyagi of health, where, by clearly just doing waxing on and waxing off, you actually learn complicated karate moves. And we can do the same thing with, one of the things that we've talked about for a long time, there's this shift happening in medicine. What do we do to help drive that forward? So Russ had this idea that we could do a podcast.
Again, with our collaboration skills and
look how good we are on camera, especially me.
with our collaboration skills, I think it'll resonate with people because very talented guy, very humble. I just think it'll be a home run. If people will tune in, they'll learn something. It'll be fun. We can make sure that they walk away from each podcast with something that they could use for their health and for their family. Folks, it's clear that we're in the middle of a paradigm shift. The health field is changing every day. Treatment protocols for heart disease, cancer, and diabetes are completely changing to what we've done in the last 100 years. Erick and I's collaboration, two guys that come from completely different fields, I believe that we could put together things that not only will educate people, but it'll help save some lives. So check out the Russ Scala YouTube channel. Leave us some feedback. Tell us what you think. Thanks, folks.